Today on Detroit Muscle, we've got a Chevelle floor that's looking pretty holy, so it's time for some sheet metal surgery. Then our Power Stop Ultimate Challenger has a date on the dyno for some tuning with one of the best in the late model horsepower biz.
Hey guys, welcome to Detroit Muscle. Today we're jumping back on our Chevelle project and there's gonna be a boatload of sparks flying for sure.
The last time you saw this thing, we were ripping and tearing into it and taking off everything that was screwed or glued into place to get it torn down and sent off to the blaster.
We found this old Chevy, that's right, in a barn. She'd been parked there for a few decades, but with some help from a winch, we got her dragged out and loaded up. Then she got her first bath that she'd had in a pretty good while. We went ahead and tore everything down in preparation for a field trip. This big piece of blue metal is what's left of our Chevelle project. We've got it fully taken apart and we're ready to take the clothes off of it.
That's right, the last time you saw this thing, it was still bolted to our frame. Since then, we unmounted it and installed it here on our rotisserie. Brought it out here to Lebanon, Tennessee to blast from the past. Blast from the past is where we take our projects when we're doing a full-blown frame-off rebuild. In addition to media blasting, they have also powder-coated a ton of stuff for us. We know the Chevelle is in pretty decent shape as far as sheet metal goes, but this is going to tell us what the paint and bodywork is hiding. Blasting isn't a single trick concept though. You got to adapt the process to the project.
We're going to use a crushed glass. It cleans real well, it gets in the pits, cleans the rust out. You got to know what you're doing, because that way you make sure you don't take a chance of warping anything. But the crushed glass works real good. Being crushed and have the points on it jagged, it gets down in them little hard to get places and cleans that stuff out.
Now we've all heard the horror stories about cars coming back from the blaster and them being all screwed up. Well, sometimes it's not the blaster's fault. Kind of like down here, you can see where a not so great repair has been made where this car's had quarters put on it. But that's not the sandblaster's fault. Where it does come into play is on these big old panels. You use the wrong technique or too much pressure, you can actually warp it up and screw it up. This is why we use these guys. They understand how to get it down to the metal without hurting it, which can be pretty tricky. You see, when you hit that metal with a bunch of high velocity media during the blasting process, one of the issues you can run into is creating a bunch of heat, which you want to keep to a minimum.
The warping that people are worried about that it could do is due to the heat, also the shock peening effect. It relaxes the metal, which causes it to stretch, and then you get the ripples.
One way to prevent that heat as much as possible is to approach the surface of the metal at about a 45-degree angle, instead of attacking it from a 90-degree angle. This will alleviate a lot of that friction and keep your metal from getting warped. But when you're talking about more delicate things like an aluminum body or say a Corvette, you want to move to this plastic bead here. What's really great about it is it'll take all the paint off, but you don't have to worry about it blowing through. Well, Vance and the guys did a really great job here on our frame for our Chevelle here at Blast from the Past. Like we said before, we had dropped this off earlier, and they blasted it and powder coated it with a matte black finish. Now we need to get it loaded up and back to the shop. Good? Looks good. Check it out. Here's our frame. Now we've got it back in the shop and it's ready to just have some things bolted to it. Now normally we don't like farming stuff like this out, but with a frame, something this size, it's a no-brainer. We're not getting too crazy with our suspension, so we decided to keep our frame rails completely stock. We went with a semi-gloss black finish. It looks great and will complement the underside of the car, not to mention that the powder coat is super durable. But we're not going to jump on this thing today. In fact, we've got a bunch of parts ordered that we're going to bolt to this thing. That's going to have to wait until next time.
What we're going to do is start cutting up our body and repair where all those tin worms have chewed on this old bow tie. We knew this ride was going to need both rear quarters, inner and outer wheel wells, and was hoping not to need a roof. Turns out the roof is in good shape. I guess you could say we had our rose-colored glasses on regarding the floors in this old car, because whenever we pulled the carpet out, we knew we had some rust and rot, but we didn't think we had this much.
Yeah, when we sent our Chevelle's body off to be stripped, we called up Auto Metal Direct to order up some sheet metal. Now, we ordered these floor halves with the anticipation of cutting them up and using bits and pieces of both to fix our floor. But now that we've got it stripped, we see there's more damage than we anticipated, so we're gonna have to go a different route.
This is our new plan of attack. Yeah, it's a giant piece of metal, but in all reality, this thing can save you a whole lot of work. If you factored in cutting out 5 or 6 different places and then coming back and finishing them out to make them look like the floor's never been cut up or anything, well, this is a smarter choice. We're gonna bust out our ESAB Rebel welder and start bracing up the car. This is the first thing we'll do because that big floor pan functions as a structural component. And if we cut it out without bracing it, it can bend and the whole car will be out of shape. And boy, we don't want to have to fool with all that.
Up next, we'll wrap up that floor pan swap, then time to tune our Turbo Hemi.
Hey guys, welcome back. Now we've got the body of our Chevelle all braced up and it's time to start cutting on that floor. To make it a little easier, we're gonna use a plasma cutter and cut it all out in one big piece. We'll just come back later and drill out those spot welds and clean up those edges.
We're gonna make sure that all of our cuts are just a bit inside where the panels are welded together, because you don't want to cut into the panel that we need to attach our new one to. It's okay to get close, but make sure you leave a little room.
Detroit Muscle presents Back to Basics, tips for the beginner gearhead.
All right, the next thing that we're gonna have to do is address the perimeter of this giant hole that Slick back there just cut into our Chevelle. Now, originally that panel was attached by these pinch welds or spot welds. And what it did from the factory is there was 2 big electrodes that squeezed the 2 panels together and fused them together. Now, for us, we don't have that type of equipment, and we're gonna have to use some rosette welds to kind of duplicate that. Now, cutting this thing out, there's probably gonna be about 900,000 of them stupid spot welds in this car, but there's a couple tips for you to show you how to cut them out. Now, the one tool that most everybody's gonna have in their toolbox that you can make work in a situation like this is just a plain old drill bit. Now, normally whenever you're trying to do that, you wanna just drill through the top layer. And to do that, when you lay it up there, well, you kind of have to wallow it around just a bit so that the edges will dig in and cut just that top side. The other thing you can do or buy is one of these purpose-made tools. Now, it's kind of like a baby hole saw, and it works pretty similar, except for you don't have to wallow it around. One other thing you can use is a plasma torch. Now, this thing will make short work of a lot of that stuff, but in all reality, it's kind of like fishing with a grenade. You can make a mess pretty quick. So if you're not as skilled at operating that thing, a better choice would be the slower two. Now, whenever you're doing sheet metal like we are here on the Chevelle, you kind of have to assess the situation on panel to panel basis, if you will. Now, right through here, we're going to be able to take that plasma torch and cut out all those spot welds to remove this piece, because we have this thing on a rotisserie. If it wasn't on the rotisserie, what you want to do is drill through this piece and not through that one, because you're going to be welding this thing from the top. With us, rotisserie, it's going to save us some work.
This handy little tool is called a panel knife, and it's perfect for separating these pieces once the welds have been cut.
That piece right up there went pretty darn quick, I have to say, but down here on the bottom, we've got a little bit different story. we're going to be removing this piece, but we're going to have to save this outer rocker. And we tried that, well, we just messed it all up. So we're going to have to take that slower approach, use the drill bits, or worse, a grinder.
You can use an air hammer to buzz these panels apart, but just be careful you don't get into that metal you don't want to cut into. Well, we just finished grinding and prepping the body of our Chevelle for our new floor. Now Tom's down there grinding some of the E-coat off so we can weld to it. Now we just need to lift it up into place, which can be a little awkward, but then again, so are we, so I think we got this.
These Auto Metal Direct panels fit nice. With the floor, you just gotta set it in the hole, then move it into place.
There you go.
We'll use some Clecos to hold it at home, roll that big old Chevy over, then grab that ESAB Rebel again, start pumping rosette welds into this dude. A little bit of welding later, and we got ourselves a brand new floor.
Stick around to check out our Challenger's spiffy new wrap.
I'll tell you what, Tom, watching you do all that sheet metal work, it's kind of tiring.
Well, I appreciate all that help.
Hey guys, welcome back. Now we pushed our Chevelle body back out and we're gonna switch gears and jump back onto our Power Stop Ultimate Challenger.
The last time you saw this old girl, we teased you just a little bit of what it was gonna look like. Well, what do you think? I have to say it's a pretty aggressive looking car, and this is how we got here.
We brought in Brand Imaging Group from Nashville to do the wrap on our Challenger. Taking this MOPAR from concept to reality was no small feat, and this is a pretty complicated wrap. There were quite a few layers involved, but the Brand Imaging crew was on top of it. The look we're going for is a combination of classic MOPAR styling cues with a more modern twist. We're sure glad we brought Brand Imaging Group in here to do that wrap because, quite honestly, it's out of our skill set. But even before they could come in and do all that work, we had a lot of work to do ourselves to make this the ultimate Challenger.
Since we're going after a Hellcat, we really got to bring our A game. The engine power guys did their part with the Hemi. Then it was our turn on the rest of the car. We started with a revamped suspension from coilovers to differential, and some upgraded brakes thanks to Power Stop. A much stronger transmission was needed to hold that power, which is going to come from a twin turbo setup from Hellion. One last thing we have to do before we get to run this Power Stop Challenger through the ringer is dial in the tune on that big powerful engine. Now that requires some equipment like a dyno and some electronics, and we don't have them here in the shop. Now, down the road just a bit, them boys down in Engine Power, well, they have it, but they're covered up. So we're going to take us a little field trip.
Welcome to DBR High Performance in Spring Hill, Tennessee.
We specialize in late model performance, taking newer cars and making them better and faster. Whether that's the driveline, suspension, brakes, engine performance, transmission, anything along those lines.
David and the crew at DBR are well known in high performance circles for their top-notch ability to squeeze every last bit of performance out of late model power plants through dyno tuning. LS, mod motor, Hemi, you name it, they can tune it.
Dyno tuning is the most important step of the whole process. You can take a car like this one and spend all the money in the world on the best parts in the world. And if the tune's wrong, you blow it up before it even leaves the shop. One of our favorites right now, we've got a 2011 CTS-V that we're building, shooting for right around 2,000 horsepower. Still a street car, still gonna pass emissions. Guy wants to drive it every day. We're shooting for a world record with the car. We're really excited about that one.
Like we said, they work on MOPARs too. There's one right there.
Still ahead, the dyno doesn't lie. What truth will it reveal about our Challenger?
Hey guys, we're back. It's time to let David at DBR High Performance take a stab at dyno tuning our twin turbo Hemi. He's got a base tune dialed in already for our first pull, but there's a hitch. Once he starts to push it, it's busting the tires loose on the dyno. So what we're doing here is raising the ride height a little bit with these adjustable spring perches. Came with our suspension kit. The reason we need to do that is because when we set the ride height originally, we didn't actually set it where it needed to be. We just kind of put it in the car and we're like, oh, we'll straighten it out later. But now it's becoming a problem because the rear of the car is sitting too low. It's putting the lower control arms at too steep of an angle, which is binding the CV axles. But it's also causing the rear tires to have too much negative camber, and we're not getting a solid patch of traction on the rollers, and it's causing the tires to spin. So we're just raising the ride height a little bit, get the wheels and tires back on, make another pull.
Chris from Power Stop Brakes is here too to see what that old Hemi will push out.
All right, we finally got the car to hook on the dyno, and we made 692 horsepower on a short pull. I let off because we got into unknown territory. So I'm gonna use HP tuners to dial in the calibration to get us where we need to be. Based off the data logs, I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna take a little bit of fuel out, and then I'm gonna go in and take a little bit of spark out. We're gonna baby step it up, and we're gonna see what happens. Made 696, air fuel looked really good. Now I'm gonna start putting some timing into it and see where we end up with power. That last run picked up a lot of power with small changes. A couple degrees of timing, picked up almost 30 horsepower, 13 pounds of boost and pump gas. I'm really happy with that number.
Well, she made 728 horsepower, along with 780 pound-feet of torque. For a comparison, let's take a look at what this stock Hellcat Charger lays down. 569 horsepower. The Power Stop car beat it by 159.
Boy, that Power Stop Challenger's no joke. I'd hate to come up against it, even if I was driving a Hellcat.
Hey guys, you've all seen us spray on lizard skin, sound, and temperature control coatings on all type of things, like wheel wells, roof panels, floor pans, and so on. And you know, using this product can make riding in your car a whole lot more comfortable and a lot quieter. Well, now Lizard Skin offers a top coat that you can spray over those coatings that can withstand the same temperature demands, noise, and vibrations. It's easy to spray on and gives you a glossy, black texturized finish. This is a great option to dress up those areas you've already protected, or it can be used by itself to protect from things like rocks or salt.
If you've got an old school Mopar and you're looking for a set of wheels with that classic rally look, but in larger sizes, then you'll want to take a look at these from year one. These cast aluminum 17 by 9 inch rallies are a year one exclusive, and they offer a 5-inch back spacing. They're also available in 17 by 8 inches with a 4 1/4 inch back space. They'll look good on an old Dodge or Plymouth, and you'll even find some room for some big brakes behind there. Well, that's all the time we have for today, so until next time, if you can't find them, grind them.